Good morning, all. This is the Development and Finance Committee meeting, May 21st, of the Housing Opportunities Commission. And present are all committee members, our commission chair, Roy Priest, and Chair Pro Tem, Commissioner Rick Nelson. And our staff, we are looking at 4 communities this morning, and with major renovations as the predominant theme of this meeting. Mr. Span, well, let's first address the minutes of our April 23rd meeting. Is there a motion to approve those as circulated?
So moved.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor saying aye.
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 Aye. Let me ask, would it be easier as we take votes for people to raise their hand from the point of view of taking the minutes? Or does it make no difference? Stacy, you have an opinion?
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I try to keep my mouth shut on such
Oh.
things. But I think it is whatever is first, consistency is key, and clarity is key. And so whatever it is, I think we just need to be clear. Raising the hand along with
A voice.
something that's audible is probably a better practice, but I'll leave it to you all and Asha weigh in as to what you think is most practical.
Well, for the purposes of our committee, do I have the consent that we raise our hand as well as vote verbally so that there's no question? I notice when I'm following other people's meetings, it's easier to see how people vote, not always to catch the voices of those.
Fine.
Is that agreed? Roy, is that all right with you?
Fine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The first community we're talking about is Georgian Court. Zach, I think you and Hunsuk are going to take the lead on this.
Yes, thank you. For the record, Zachary Marks, Chief Real Estate Officer. We have 2 very similar comprehensive renovations being led by Hyun-Suk Choi. He will walk you through both of them, and the actions today are focused around selection of the general contractor for each of these renovation projects.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Good morning, Development Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Hyun-Suk Choi. I am Housing Acquisition Manager on the real estate development team. Can you go to next page, please? Actually, go to the next page, please. Thank you. So Georgian Court was originally constructed in 1975 with 147 units. In November 1st, in 2019, the limited partnership interest was transferred to the HOC. Georgian Court is currently operating under extended use covenant, which is required 29 unit project-based Section 8, set aside at 50% area median income, and 118 units set aside at 60% of area median income. The renovation will be comprehensive with a resident in place, facilitated by temporarily stop the future lease activity and moving up to 12 current occupied unit to offsite location in order to create 1 vacant building or 24 vacant unit. Can you go to the next page, please? So Georgian Court, some minor renovation done in 2001, and also currently occupied is 91.8%. And also we are going to create 8 UFAS unit. Additionally, 2 unit will be renovated with comply with the requirement of hearing and visual impairment unit. And also we are going to upgrading existing playground area. Can you go to the next page, please? So Georgian Court, you can actually see above than Aspen Hill area. There is the leasing office and the community room, and also there is the playground area. The property is actually located in the qualified central tract, which is a qualified for 30 base boost for that the low-income housing tax credit, which is we are getting additional light tech equity. Next page. Thanks. And in February, staff issued request for the proposal RFP 2237 for general contract service renovation of a Georgian Court apartment. Staff held a virtual pre-proposal meeting on February 23rd in 2021. And on April 12th, staff received a full proposal from the qualified firm to participate to be considered responsive and to be evaluated. The scoring team consists of the staff from mortgage finance and asset management and the construction management. Review the response on April 26, 27, and 28, based on the 5 criteria: contract qualification, general experience, and the management operation, and the pricing, and the minority female disabled participation, which is required minimum is 25%. Next page. So here's some scope of work. So the staff is looking for that the comprehensive renovation and adding significant improvement to the energy efficient and the common area extended building and the resident unit. So here's that the existing kitchen, and this is below that. That's a rendering of the future unit as of the back, as of the kitchen. Next page. So staff engaged with the ECS to asbestos container survey, and we found that there's a lot of asbestos material in Georgian Court. We can actually see that below the list of that item, but mainly drywall joint compound. But obviously there is more, and there is a cluster building area address, and I can show it at the table. But the current scope is the staff is including that the renovation scope to remove all asbestos container material. Next page. So there is a 4 respondents to the RP 2237. The Hamel score highest the average of the evaluator scores on criteria with the average scores of 84.3. As you can see that the highlighted that the ranking number 1. So basically they are they didn't got the highest score is pricing, but MBE participation they above than 30 between 30 to 35 they are getting 5 points. But if you're someone or above than subcontract 35 they'll get 10 points. But that's the 2 area they didn't got the highest score. But based on their experience. And also they're providing more the COVID-19 plan, and then they're providing detailed abatement plan. And also Hamel will give us the cost savings if we are doing 2 buildings at a time, because the current occupancy is basically we have only 10 vacant unit. So we don't want to duration is a longer renovation to the longer. So Hamel only provide us some solution. So that's why the staff is put it in up to stop the lease 24 units. Next page. So based on the evaluation of that, the 4 respondents, staff is recommend to selection Hamel Builder as a general contractors. Hamel has been a proven history of the successful work for the HOC, including RAD6 and Green Hill. The renovation will be similar in scope to Green Hill and to increase the efficiency of that the building and reducing operation costs to the both property and the resident. And as I mentioned before, that the only Hamel provide that the COVID-19 operation plan, and also they're providing that the more detailed abatement plan, and also they're actually showed us to, hey, you guys are actually able to save if you're doing that, the top 2 building for phase. Next page. So here's the preliminary source and news. We are going to issuing long-term bond and then short-term bond. And also we are having a participate LIHTC equity roughly $22.3 million based on 94 cents plus that the 30 base boost. So that's what we are getting additional LIHTC equity. And also there is the property currently, there is a 2 replace reserve, which is a roughly close to $1 million replace reserve amount. And then another one is the roughly 476,000 visual receiver reserve, which is a HUD is required. So those funds will be, we can able to use the future, the funding source as we need it. Next page. So here's the preliminary stabilization operation. So we are going, so HOC engaged with the P&A consultant. So basically they're providing us a roughly the capital improvement for the 20 years, roughly $4.6 million. So we already covered that. The current scope of work is already covered that all P&A recommendation. But also we are going to put it in initially place reserve $1,500 per unit, which is a $220,000, and then plus the ongoing $350 per unit with the increasing 3% annually. For the 20 years, we are come up at the $1.6 million. But staff is not expecting major capital improvement after renovation is completed. Next page, please. So here's a team assemble. Architect is Carl Radley Architect, which is we engaged from that architect pool. And the property manager is currently Edgewood, and we are staff is recommend to the selection of a general contractor is Hamel. And we are expecting receiving LIHTC's proposal from the LIHTC investors next week. So we will bring that to commission in next cycle. Next. Staff is going to create new ownership entity and as well as a general partners. Here's a org chart. Next page, please. In 2018, staff request for the pre-development the budget, which is a $350,000. We have an obligation 144K, so currently remaining is basically zero. So staff is requesting approval to increase $500,000 to existing pre-development budget fund with a loan from the OHRF to prepare the low-income housing tax credit for the submission to the state and to get the building permit and additional pre-construction service and legal and then finance and development consultant and the contingency up to the $500,000.
What is it that has caused the increase over the 2018 estimate of costs?
So
Why the
I didn't increase. I'm sorry.
Why the increase? I'm not sure I'm understanding.
So the first column is show that approved that the May 2nd in 2018. Here is a list of that item, $350,000.
No, Hansuk, he's asking what is driving the increase?
Oh, because of the building permit was not part of that pre-development budget at the time in 2018. And also we are going to submit LIHTC, so there is a required for reserve that fee we have to pay to the CDA.
So getting the permit and the related costs.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry, what were you saying about LIHTC?
LIHTC fee.
Application fee. But does this suggest that in the future we ought to include these items in the original pre-development budgets?
Yes.
Because we ran into this once before, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's my point is that we ought to get as much of an idea as we can up front, rather than waiting for 2 years.
And
to
these
find
are
out.
known costs.
Yeah. I mean, if individual items increase during the period, it's one thing, but to have totally left them out is another.
Yep, and the step-based future, we'll prepare for that before probably a pre-development budget to cover to closing.
In the original development budget for this project, did you contemplate you were going to do tax credits as part of the source of the financing for that project?
Yes,
Yeah, 'cause
we
I
are
mean,
going to re-syndicate the Georgian Court.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just only trying to figure out the separation between chart 1 and chart 2. Following up on the question was raised by Commissioner Nelson and Simon about including them in the original pre-development. Sometimes there may not be things that you contemplate at the pre-development phase that you do as part of refining the financing structure. And I see you added building permit, which you did not have in the original piece of the pre-development cost outline. I'm just trying to, so this is $500,000 in addition to the $350,000.
That is correct. So $350,000 is more like a feasibility / the pre-development budget. And so now we are actually submit building permit, and we need to pay building permit fee in order to getting a building permit before the closing. And we are going to, STEB is going to submit the low income margin tax credit, and we are expecting 4010 letter. Then we have to pay to that the reserve fee, which is a little bit high, 5% of total LIHTC equity. And then obviously there's a legal involved because of we have to negotiate with the general contractors and also the LIHTC investors.
Right, so there's about 150,000 of this additional amount that we would not have been able to predict, but the rest of it, I do agree that we should have included it at the outset. And we will, in the future, plan for it.
Thank you.
Amount.
Appreciate that.
Also on the chart above, it has the approved, revised, and obligated amounts. And then you show a remaining budget of 0. This suggests to me, if I look at this chart, I'm not understanding something, that you have obligated 144,000 other 350. But that can't be true because you're simply saying you have no money remaining. I don't understand this.
Oh, sorry. So basically what happened is using example, if there's a finance and development consultant, $63,000 reallocating it, but we already pay 15,000, sorry, the delta between 45 to 63,000. So we already pay. So we already created PO 63,000, but we didn't pay 45,000 to the feature.
What he's saying,
Yep.
Unsuk, is that
Yep.
in showing a column that reads remaining budget, it essentially is misleading.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Okay, so
6,000.
yeah, it doesn't make, yeah, we need to actually,
Yeah.
we'll address optically how this works, because you're right, it absolutely does give the wrong impression.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand. So the divide the budget and how much we pay, and then there's the obligation. So in meaning is a future payment. Yep.
Yeah, the bigger learning is when we're doing a re-syndication that these pre-development costs that around tax credit and taking it to permit be included in the original budget.
Okay.
The original pre-development budget.
Any other question?
I have a question. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sure.
I'm back on page 18. Under that note,
Page 18, that means you have to go up.
18, no, I'm sorry, 18 of 2052, which is 11. I'm slide 18, I guess I'm saying. All right, the note.
Sure.
I'm not sure I fully understand that.
So we have a current existing replace reserve, 2 accounts.
Right, right.
One is the replace reserve for the capital improvement.
Mhm,
Another one is called the resolvable received reserve, which is that HUD is required.
right,
So that's the two account we have.
Right.
Roughly, when you're adding together, roughly like $1.4 million currently available.
And you're saying that we can either use them as funding sources or be distributed to the owner.
Yes, so currently that the source and use, the reserve amount is not including it.
Why?
Because we're still trying to determine nail down whether or not we can absolutely use it as a source in this deal. I mean, it's fungible, so even if it's distributed to the owner, it's conceivable that it would come back in another form, but we're just trying to nail down if we can actually, from a technical standpoint, just push them right into the deal.
I mean, there's a legitimate question about whether we can use the reserves for.
It appears to be yes, and we're working to resolve it.
Okay, I mean, because it seems to me that if we can, I don't know why we don't.
If we can, we will, for sure.
Well, okay, then, all right.
And I have a couple questions going back to page 11 of 52. In what we can do, I know you're intending to move to UFAS units, but I think there is a level of accessibility that we can provide, at least visitability, by running sidewalks and access through the patio doors of the ground floor units. And I think wherever we can do that and achieve 32-inch clear passage through the unit, it makes these units more adaptable and more usable. And I also would like to take into and put into our vocabulary curbless showers rather than roll-in showers. A roll-in shower is just a word that implies disability, etc. And I think what I would love to see us do is talk about just making our properties more usable over the next 20 years. And if we can get a 32-inch wide, at least if we can make the bathroom door accessible so that they are visitable, it's just a long-term benefit and saves us turnover and saves us the emotional trauma of people having to relocate if their physical condition changes. So I would urge you to try and make those couple principles as a given in any of these renovation projects that we're looking at, where we're putting in millions and millions of dollars. It's going to be invested for the next 20 years and beyond. It's not just our current inventory of applicants, it's what happens to people once they live in our units. And I also would appreciate if the staff would consult with a playground specialist. And I'm sure they have someone at the Park and Planning Commission to give us some guidance on how we can make the playgrounds and our choice of equipment as usable to as broad a ability level as absolutely possible. And so as I look at these, we're spending way too much money not to spend additional money to make these units more usable to more people over the next 20 to 30 years.
Okay. Commissioner, on the last point, with regard to the playground, that makes perfect sense, and of course we'll do that. on the nomenclature and our vocabulary around this, as well as the opportunity to be more considerate in our reference. That makes perfect sense as well. On the sidewalks and the door widening, I don't know. I mean, that the impact on this budget for these re-syndications, you know, I don't know the possibility. So we'll have to go back and scrub. And so what we'll try and do between now and our commission meeting, assuming you all are supportive of our recommendation, is scrub that and figure out how to do it within budget. And let me just say, I'm assuming these comments, all of the ones that we've had, flow through, not just yours, but Commissioner Nelson's as well, flow through to the next developments that we're looking at as well. So on all of them, I think we'll scrub the numbers and see what we can do around visibility, and in particular these sidewalks and widening of doorways. My guess is it's going to be tight. We're seeing pretty significant increases in materials costs.
Yep.
And I mean really significant, and labor, particularly for certain trades.
Yep.
So we'll review it and we'll give it our best shot. I do think it adds. I mean, if I had to guess, it's probably going to be, well,
10%.
no, I don't think it's going to be 0.5%. For the sidewalks and widening of doorways of a 1975 building. I don't think that's. I think it's going to
Well, I would ask that you look at them and see what can be achieved. I think we don't appreciate the isolation that occurs for families who have family members who can't visit them, can't participate in family activities, can't hold a bridge club or a book club in their homes because their homes are not available to friends and relatives. So I'm just hoping that we're gonna look through the lens that I look at property through and calculate the costs over the 20 years that families, there'll probably be how many generations of families in that 20 years, which I think if we know, I would love to know. And if we don't know, I would love to ask the staff to calculate and think about how many generations of families will be accommodated in these units over the years, and then take a look at the cost escalation. And I think we would find that they're not inappropriate, but I leave it to the research to tell us that.
Commissioner, we're not disputing the validity of it. That's not where I'm not disputing that at all. And I'm committing to you that we're going to scrub. What I am concerned about, because it's great for us to be on the bleeding edge, is that the financing is not on that same bleeding edge. And so, and we don't dictate those terms, and it must reach a 115 debt cover and still reserve properly. So those are two constraints that we can't move. As much as I want to change housing finance, and I think this agency has pushed it, there are going to be some upper limits, but we're willing to push to those upper limits and look and scrub and make sure we get as much of this in as we can. Okay.
Okay. And just so I don't repeat these comments every meeting, which I'm sure you will all appreciate, I really would hope that you use this lens to see what can be done. And if you can only do pieces of it, at least do what can be incorporated so that we are constantly improving the quality and adaptability of our developments.
Absolutely. What I will say this it is broadly across the United States, and in particular in the state of Maryland, since that's more within our direct control, that when we're thinking about when the state is thinking about how to fund tax credit transactions, that those that are that have a significant component around visitability, certainly meeting elevated UFAS standards, they ought to be considered for a 4 and 9% twinning transaction, because we need the additional kind of 40 cents per dollar from the 9% credits to offset some of this, because we can't, the costs are greater, particularly on an older building. They are justified, but what doesn't wind up changing is the income requirement. We can't charge more for that, and nor
That's
should
right.
we be able to. We can't charge more for that unit.
Yeah.
And in fact, in most cases, where it is a more affordable unit to persons or families who in fact have a greater level of need around affordability. So I think one of the things that I would invite commissioners to do, particularly when interfacing with colleagues in the legislature, the executive branch, and in planning, is point to the fact that this is why those 4 and 9% twinning transactions make perfect sense, particularly in high cost areas like ours. So,
And I think that many jurisdictions now are mandating subsidized units to be visitable. And just because it's not mandated here doesn't mean that jurisdictions are doing it. They're required to do it. And I don't have a current list of states, but I am assembling it. And I think the movement is going that direction, and I think it should go that direction. So we might as well comply, anticipate a requirement to comply wherever we can, and do our best for our neighbors and residents. So thank you very much. I appreciate the awareness. Are there questions? Oh, I had one other question, and that was, when builders submit proposals to us, evidencing their female ownership, their disown or participation of percentage, the MFD percents, how is that verified? And then how do we monitor it for our developments as they're in process? Is it just put on the application and then everybody forgets it and assumes it's so? Or are we really pushing it? And the Section 3, I am still concerned about how we're monitoring that with our contractors.
so we are pushing it, and compliance monitors it separately from the development team, so that we have that separation of duties. And so they're agnostic. One of the things about our compliance team is that they're agnostic about who you are and your experience with us, and they're focused on that. So there are a number of certifications that you can get through the state around MFD, but then we then have to actually chart against progress the level of success for MFD, so how they're achieving it. And so the compliance monitors it, and they do it by development or by transaction throughout the transaction's life cycle. And then quite frankly, we're learning and becoming more sophisticated because we're monitoring it. So it's not a static, sort of check boxes, and all of compliance's experiences kind of inform the ways that folks would abuse it and so forth. Now, I would say that we're probably more effective because we're local to the community itself, but we're imperfect. So we're continuing to ratchet it up, just as we're ratcheting up the need for partners to actively engage and meet the standard, just as we're requiring the team to be more discerning in their RFP review and commentary. And, we're still learning lessons about discrepancies and viewpoints. And some of that, unfortunately, it's our own internal personal experiences and bias that drive the scoring. And so we've got to get to a place where we have a level of consistency and normalcy around the importance of that inclusion. So while it's imperfect, we are monitoring it. And I think we're pretty aggressive. And I don't, it's no cakewalk for the partners themselves, but it's not meant to be. I mean,
I'm sure it's not, and I appreciate that update. I think it would be useful to the commission at some point to have a report on the progress we're making in both how we view and then how what is shown at the time of the submission of a proposal till the turnkey, if you will, as to how the firms are performing, because I think that should affect future rankings. And I know Commissioner Merkowitz has had some questions around this issue as well. And I think Commissioner Nelson has. If we could have a report on how we're doing this and what progress we're making and what success we're having in tracking these things and improving our performance in these areas.
Understood. And I'll make that note because we're actually in a time of a significant rehabilitation. So, and that makes perfect sense. So thank you for that.
Let me, that discussion has just raised 2 points with me. One, Jackie, on progress we've made. I was mentioning the other day that I noticed in one of the emails we got that one of our contractors, Bazzuto, has now advertised 2 summer internships for HOC staff. I'm sorry, HOC residents, or
wonderful.
And I assume that includes voucher holders. That I think is a major positive.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
The other thing that I would raise, and I think Stacy just alluded a bit to it. It's interesting when you look at these 2 projects we're considering today and compare the rankings of the same contractors. There's some difference. Like on the issue of minority participation, Hamel, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, has a different ranking in this one versus
I noticed that.
the second one. And I'm not sure whether that just reflects an inconsistency in the reviewers' rankings from one to the other, or whether it's different people. But those kinds of things need to be, some attention needs to be paid to that so that we can make sure that we're all on the same track.
Yes.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I would move approval.
Commissioner Priest
I'm not sure he
has had to leave us.
I thought so.
So I trust I can second the motion, and
We'll both vote for it.
I'll call for the vote. Those in favor indicate by saying aye by raising their hand. It's approved. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. The next one will go a little quicker because we've covered a number of issues that apply to both. But Mr. Marks or Mr. Choi, are there, take it away on the issues of Shady Grove property?
Yep. Good morning again. For the record, my name is Hyun-Suk Choi. So Shady Grove was originally constructed in 1977 with 144 unit. January 2017, the limited partnership interest was transferred to the HOC. Shady Grove is currently operating under extended use covenant, which is require 144 unit, which is 100% project section 8, set aside at the 50% area median income. And Shady Grove also has a waiting list over 220 unit household. Sorry, can you go to the couple page next? Sorry. Yes, next. 28, page 28 out of the 22, 52. Yeah, thank you. And then also the renovation will be completed with a resident in place and the facility by temporary staff in future leasing activity, and then moving up to 12 occupied unit to offsite location in order to creating additional building or 24 vacant unit. Pretty much similar to like a Georgian Court and the Shady Group. Can you go to the next page? So Shady Grove project is close to King Farm development and also West Side Shady Grove project and the Shady Grove Metro station. To the right side has a leasing office and the playground area. To the west side has a playground area, but there's no leasing office. Can you go to the next page? So in March's staff issue request for proposal RP 2246 for general contractor service for renovation of a Shady Grove project. The staff held the virtual pre-con call on April 23rd. Staff received 6 proposal from the 6 qualified firm to participate to be considered responsive and to be evaluated. Scoring team consists of a staff from compliance, asset management, and the construction management to review the response on April 27 and 28 based on the 5 criteria: qualification, experience, management and operation, and the pricing, and minor female disabled participation, which is a required minimum is 25%. Next page. So scope of work is very similar to our Georgian Court. However, the Shady Grove project, actually, we are going to opening kitchen design, which is nice and also more spacious. But I don't have it final rendering yet. So architect is currently working, but I don't think it's going to have a commission meeting. But if available, I will put it in the final rendering on page 51.
When you say
Go ahead, Rick.
when you say opening it up, can you sort of describe what you mean?
Yeah,
Are you
so
getting rid of a wall or?
right. So if you're looking at the current view of a kitchen, so to the left side is there's a wall with a cabinet. To the right side has a stove. So basically to the left side, we are going to open, so basically knock down to ceiling to kind of a countertop. So you'll see that below that. So you can actually see that the inside the kitchen to that the living room.
Okay.
What about the ability of a countertop with an overhang so that people can use that as eating space?
Yes, that's a current.
Because it didn't show a projection, and I just wanted to be sure that we were going to accommodate and allow that flexibility to families.
Yeah, so that's why I mentioned this is not the final rendering. I don't have a final rendering, but this is a preliminary rendering I have from that architect. But
Okay.
if I have, before that, the commission meeting, then I will put it in final rendering. But I don't think it's gonna be happen. But when I bring that the final development plan, you will see that rendering
Okay.
in the future. So
Okay.
next page. So Shady Grove is similar to the Georgian Court, has a asbestos contained material, but actually we have a radon on Shady Grove project. So current scope is remove all asbestos material, the contained material, and also to install in radon mitigation system. That's a part of our scope. Next page. So Hamel is basically got the highest score, 96.3. So why is that they're receiving minority female participation? They're actually above than 50%. They're receiving subcontractors, and actually they're showing all subcontractor dollar amount with their MBE, the actual number, their MBE account numbers. So staff is actually asked that to Hamel, and they actually Hamel actually told me that the Shady Grove project, the MBE sub actually providing more than Georgian Court.
And is that because they're using different subs?
Yeah, so they sending out to all subcontractors, but some subcontractor may be busy, so they might not able to submit Georgian Court. But because of a Shady Grove, actually we are issued later than Georgian Court. So maybe subcontractor was a little bit focused on Shady Grove project. So
Great.
that's why Hamel got more.
That would
MBE.
help explain the difference between the two.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Next page. So again, Hamel has a great experience with HOC, but the scope is similar to Green Hill and Georgian Court. Again, Hamel actually providing that the COVID-19 plan and then detailed abatement plan, which is really valuable to us to get a highest score. Next page. So here is a preliminary sources and use. So Shady Grove doesn't have others, like a Georgian Court has a two replace reserve, but Shady Grove has only one replace reserve, approximately $1.2 million. So potentially we can able to use funding source. Next page. So here's a stabilization operation. So we are going to put it in initially place reserve $1,500 per unit, and we are going to put it in $350 per unit annually to increasing 3%. So we are looking for 35 years long-term the terms to meet the debt service coverage of 1.15 to able to raise above than $30 million. Next page.
Before you leave that for just a moment, I see you're expecting or projecting the occupancy at 95%.
Yes.
With that location, I would hope that we end up reaching 98% occupancy and are able to sustain it, because I would think, well, and that's true of Georgian Court as well. Those locations are prime access to employment and other services. So hopefully we'll exceed the 95%.
Oh, yes. Historically, Shady Grove project is almost close to 100%. As I mentioned before, we have a waiting list like above than 220 household.
Yeah.
So once that the tenant is moving out, we can fill right away. But
And how does that?
Sorry, go ahead.
How does that wait list apply to the general HOC wait list? I mean, how are those people, those applicants, are they separate and apart, and the placement and the match to a unit just from that wait list, or is it from our universal list?
Well, each property has to have its own separate wait list.
It does.
There's a requirement, but it does offer wait list applicants the opportunity to also be on our general wait list.
Okay, and how does this really match with the unit mixes? As I was looking at the unit mix, it seemed that we had a real shortage of the one, and would be able to accommodate everyone on the wait list on another bedroom category. Is that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I was trying to look at how the wait list would match the units by bedroom size. And the wait list, we don't have near enough units for people on the wait list, but I think it was a 2-bedroom where we had 55 on the wait list, but
I see.
considerably more units. So then if we don't have enough families on that specific wait list, families from the general wait list would be eligible.
That's correct. I mean, they would absolutely be eligible for application. Yes, absolutely. And then Hunsick was starting to say that the 95% that projected, that's an underwriting guideline.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
So that's why it's there. It actually doesn't, it's not an operational reality. It's a stress test
Okay.
that's included. And because you could always manipulate the numbers by putting a 98% occupancy. But what does this look like at a 95% occupancy with,
Okay.
the same expense characteristics and then a relatively normalized growth rate?
And who manages this development?
Management is Edgewood.
Edgewood, good.
Stacy, can you go, I'm a little confused, go back over this business of individual property wait list versus the general wait list?
Yeah, folks are, it's all managed through our housing pass system, but each property itself is required to have, particularly these tax credit properties, these resyndications, they're required to have their own separate wait lists.
And how does somebody indicate a preference for Shady Grove, for instance?
Oh, no, the Shady Grove itself would have, literally, there's a drop down for Shady Grove. And so you would be a part of that wait list. And then if you want to vie for other housing opportunities within our portfolio, then you could ask for the general wait list.
But somebody who is on the general wait list, who at the time they filed didn't indicate Shady Grove, wouldn't get that opportunity, or?
No, they would get the opportunity, because if there is say at the 2-bedroom level and they were looking for a 2-bedroom, then the property management company would pivot toward the general wait list when looking to fill those 2-bedroom.
If they didn't have
sufficient applicants on the property specific wait list.
Okay.
Right. But I want to remind you all that, while we work hard to mine the housing path, not the property specific, but the general wait list for persons who would be interested in the units. And we have some success, but the vast majority of persons who are on the general wait list are there because they want access to a housing choice voucher. And so sometimes, many times, in fact, even if we don't have a voucher, but we have a unit for which that family can qualify based on their self-reported income, they will pass because they're looking for a voucher. Right. Okay.
I would love at some point to get a profile of our wait list, the housing path wait list, with their characteristics and unit size requirements and so forth. I just think it'd be very interesting for us as commissioners to have an update and
Sure.
know.
I'm almost positive we've included it in at least some of the data here and there, but probably not as a composite view of the wait list. So I think that's probably something that's something we can do.
Okay. I know it'd be a point in time, but I think it would be interesting to look at it versus the county demographics, et cetera. So I'd be interested in seeing that. Sorry, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Choi.
Oh, so next page. So so this is a team assemble. So the architect is the Bennett Franklin McCarter architect, was we select from that architect pool. Property management is Edgewood. We are staff is recommend to Hamel as of general contractors. Staff is waiting for that proposal from the lighting investors. Like next week, we should have a proposal, and we are going to submit. We are going to select the lighting investors next cycle commission. Next page. So here's a new org chart, a new entity for LLC as a limited partnership. And also we are going to create that general partners. So here's the org chart. Next page. So as I mentioned before, that the staff, the commission approved that the pre-development cost, which is a feasibility kind of $350,000, and we are currently remaining $25,000. However, staff is requesting increase $485,000 for building permit, lighting application, lighting reserve fee, and then pre-construction service and legal, and the financing consultant and the contingency. $485,000 to be funded with the OHF 2. Next page.
Just to repeat Commissioner Simon's comment about the remaining budget column, it does
Yes.
make sense.
Yep. So
And
I'll
also,
modify that.
the fact that, as we earlier agreed, these anticipated costs are going to come into us for approval early on because they're known costs that will be faced.
Yep.
I just want to be sure that that's understood.
Yep, that's understood.
Thank you.
So that's it for my item.
If you don't have any more questions, Jackie, I move approval.
And in the absence of Mr. Priest, I will second it. And if there are no other questions you have, we'll
Aye.
vote aye. And the recommendations are approved by the commission, the
Thank you.
committee, for referral to the full commission.
Thank you.
Our next item is 4527 Avondale Street and a discussion of its disposition. Who is gonna,
Zach, are you leading this or Carrie?
Zach is discussing this one. Good morning, commissioners.
morning?
Thank you. Good morning again. Zachary Marks, Chief Real Estate Officer. This item is a request for authorization of the Executive Director to enter into a non-binding letter of intent for the disposition of 4527 Avondale. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, one more. Thanks. So, as you may remember, back in 2014, we received 4 of these kind of multiplex units as a right of first refusal package. Commission ultimately triggered on that package and closed in order to preserve these units, which were under contract with a for-profit developer And these units, were renting anywhere from 40 to 60% AMI at the time, completely unrestricted, obviously very vulnerable housing. Next slide, please. These are directly behind, 3 of them are directly behind Waverly House. So that does not include this one. And then up the street on the northern side of Avondale, Avondale runs perpendicular to 355 in Wisconsin, and it runs parallel to East West Highway. And so of the 4, 3 of them are on the eastern end of Avondale and are directly behind Waverly House. And then there's this 4th one, which you see here, 4527, which is on the northern side of Avondale Street and is by itself. It has 4 units in the building. The 4 units generally rent around 60% AMI, and they are unrestricted, but of course owned by the commission. And so, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we were recently approached by a local architect who in addition to his work as an architect, also does area very small infill deals, single family or these, small multiplex units. And his desire was and he just asked what our plans were for 4527. His plans are to combine the 2, and you can see in the bottom left, the 4531's on the left, 4527's on the right. And the general idea, his general idea would be to combine those and do a small condominium deal. He has in the past done projects with affordable housing in it. He would like to do the same thing here. He believes he can get at least 20% MPDUs into this and actually keep them on site, which, as we know, is a big challenge with condominiums. And so he would like to start to explore this possibility, start to get into some pre-development work, and look at what he may, in fact, be able to produce here through an entitlement process. In our view, there are 4 units at 4527. They are naturally occurring affordable housing. We certainly would expect that you all would want those replaced in any new development. The north side of Avondale is not particularly fertile for height and density. It was zoned differently than the southern side of Avondale, and so there really isn't much for us to do from a development perspective on the north side. And so we thought this was an interesting enough idea to bring forward to you and see if it's something that you wanted to allow the architect to explore on a non-binding basis. Come back when we have more answers and make some additional decisions then. Next slide, please.
Zach, excuse me just for a minute. Do
Sure.
we have an appraisal at this number?
We don't have an appraisal. We can certainly do that. That's not a problem. There have been a number of these properties, which are very similar up and down the street, have sold over the last 3 to 5 years. So we do have sort of luckily a number of very comparable trades.
But they're old if they're 3 to 5 years old.
I just mean, I mean as far back as that, but we have some that we can actually just skip. I can show you on the next, I think it's the next slide.
Just come back to it then.
Yeah, sure. It'll be in 2 slides, I think. But yes,
Sorry,
we'll speak to that. That's okay. And so, to the point of, these are obviously acquired. This building was obviously acquired under right of first refusal. And so despite the fact that the commission is always focused on mission, whether we've acquired it through right of first refusal or not, that obviously, just adds that extra little bit of focus on making sure that, that use of the right of first refusal, is we are fulfilling the spirit and of its intent. And so, in our view, he believes he can get about 36 units here. that would yield 8 MPDUs. And what that would affect is basically the 2 existing properties have 4 each for unrestricted affordable units in them. This would turn all 8 into obviously restricted MPDU for sale units. That's the one caveat, is it's switching from rental to for sale, but it is taking 8 unrestricted units and turning them into restricted units new. And so we think that's a pretty compelling idea, given there really isn't much else we would be able to do on the north side other than just hold these properties and continue to operate them. We obviously have a sizable portfolio in Bethesda, so I think some diversification and opportunity here with for sale. I should add that even the non-MPDU condo units here would be relative to what you're used to seeing in Bethesda, also at a discount to that. So there's a real opportunity here with an architect who's doing this for a number of reasons, but he certainly has indicated to me that he's very interested in seeing some public good come out of this, and some affordable mission met on site. And so we thought it was worthwhile to allow him to explore this. In the event we all move forward, there's a whole entitlement process of a couple of years, so there's ample time to transition the property. So there's no rush to disposition or anything else here. This is really just to give him the confidence that he can spend a little bit of money starting to investigate this process.
Is this property going to be covered by the increased MPDU requirement for proximity to Metro?
Yeah, so he will have to do
more than 20%, won't he? Didn't that percentage increase?
So the Bethesda has the increased floor of 15, but that's the only requirement governing this.
But isn't there an incentive for doing more?
Yes, and I should say
This says that applies across the street, I thought.
What's that?
I thought that in the body of your recommendation, you said that the potential for increased development applies across the street, but not on this side of Avondale.
So what applies across the street, but not on this side, is actually the height and density bonuses that provision of extra MPDUs get you everywhere else in the county. That the way in which this master plan was approved, there are pieces of the CBD, the downtown Bethesda plan, that actually don't give height and density bonuses for having provided extra MPDUs. And so as a result, on the north side, the map, the height in the zone is the height. The density is the density, excluding some of the other availability within the plan. So it's this really sort of weird outcome that has produced really some of the only properties in the entire county that you don't get MPDU height and density bonuses, which is why it's really not a great fit for the way we go about development, because you're really missing out on something significant in terms of actual physical units. So that's why we felt that a small for sale opportunity here could be the right fit for just what's possible. On the next slide, and just Commissioner Simon, just to double back really quickly, I would say that, and next slide's fine. I would say that right now the conversation is, as the language in the packet is selected very carefully. It's right now we're just saying at minimum 20, but we've had a number of discussions around what's possible here, and so I would just say right now the position is at least 20% MPDUs. So in the event we're able to craft something even better, that's what we'll bring.
Okay.
From a valuation perspective, so getting to your
I
question of a few.
missed those dates, so. they
Yeah,
are
no
more
problem,
current.
no problem. Yeah, so as you can see, there's a few that sold in, in the past calendar year. There are others that are, 3.5, 4 years old, but it's one of these unusual situations where you actually have a lot of very good comps right there.
Yeah.
And what it really tells us is that most of the stuff on the north side's trading around 1.2. Most of the stuff on the south side's trading around 1.6, and that those numbers are we're definitely getting data points that are showing us that this is a that we have a pretty good handle on what valuation ought to be. He's actually without being specific, because he hasn't given me license to, but he is under contract with, or he's moving to go under contract with the building next door, as I mentioned at the beginning, and it would be at a very similar price point. So, so even the other unit, or even the other building he's looking to buy is consistent with what we're showing you here. So, from the perspective of a non-binding LOI, that gives him comfort that he's got the ability to move forward with these two properties and continue discussions. We're going to go sit down with DHCA and see if there are, any possible needs or wants of theirs that could be met here. There's some indication that this, affordable for sale in Bethesda is something they may be particularly interested in. So, we're going to go have some conversations with them as well, and come back to you all with a much more fully formed idea of what can be done here. But we thought it was enough so far to begin that discussion. So next slide, please. So so the request is again just authorization. It's a non-binding LOI, and it's purely for disposition. So just be clear, this would be a disposition to to the architect. This is a non-binding LOI. If we were to move to a true sales agreement, that would come back to you all, and we would really nail down the covenants at that point. Much like what we've done elsewhere on dispositions, where we've said, you can buy this, but you got to do A, B, and C, and you got to put that in the contract. It's got to be legally binding. We would do the same thing. We do the same thing here, but it's a pure disposition. So we're not proposing any development role for HOC in this project. This would be for the architect to take and run with, and simply abide by this disposition contract. And at the same time, should this move forward, we'd also come back to you with plans on how to make sure that these property, that 4527, that any households there can be comfortably transitioned. That's obviously something that HOC has a great deal of experience with, particularly over the last bunch of years. But again, it's years away, so we can build a good plan there if it becomes necessary. And I'll just end by saying, while we're not necessarily asking for what the 1.2 million in proceeds would be used for, it's our sort of default presumption right now that if we were to sell this property at 1.2 million, it would simply be used to reduce the real estate line of credit, which was used to acquire these properties in the first place.
Or we might use it for accessibility features in some of our other developments. But anyway, just had to get that in, couldn't resist. Rick, do you have any questions? And if not, would you care to make a motion?
No, I don't want to make a motion. I do have a number of issues.
Okay.
On your last point, in terms of the relocation, if there's any cost related to relocation, who pays for it?
That can be a point of negotiation.
Also, are there any federal funds involved in this, or insurance that would trigger a uniform relocation?
No, but we have no.
Okay. But, I mean, that's one. This recommendation raises a number of concerns for me. One of which is HOC does not have, or needs to clarify, I should say, its policy for disposition when that should occur. We're sort of riding by the seat of our pants on making those kinds of decisions. We've had 2 occasions recently where we've disposed of in those properties for our own benefit in terms of the developments that we're doing in Hillendale and Wheaton. But here we're making a recommendation to do it. We don't have any appraisals, and I must say, going out to get an appraisal is not necessarily going to answer my question. Appraisals are,
Yeah.
yeah, appraisals are appraisals. But the other thing is, I mean, one, you got a property that sold for 1.3 in October, and this offers for 1.2. And it's my understanding, Jackie, you guys know better than I, that in the last 6 months, we have seen a tremendous spike
Yeah.
in terms of valuation
Value.
of properties. So
Absolutely.
why the heck would we think about selling a property for less than what was received 6 months ago when prices have gone up? But
Yeah.
then the other and much larger issue is, as all of you know, I am one of the biggest fans of the right of first refusal. And I personally was pushing this to be one of those projects that we in the county consider exercising a ROFR on. There's, I believe, a serious question that can be raised in terms of HOC, or for that matter, anybody in the county, exercising ROFR and 7 years later selling the property to another developer. I mean, that's something that people who are opposed to ROFR would pick up on. I mean, they don't want folks. It's just like the issue with the eminent domain. They don't want you going in and taking stuff so you can give it to another developer. That wasn't the intent. I understand that. And the other is, there is a big difference, at least in my mind, between a rental development and a sale
For
development.
sale.
And the MPDU sales, a different income clientele. The length of time that the MPDU controls apply for sale are not the same as rental. And even though you might have a dearth of affordable sales in Bethesda, you also have a dearth of affordable rentals in Bethesda. And in listening to the discussion, it seems to suggest that HOC's main goal is redevelopment. And that's not HOC's main goal. I mean, we do a lot of stuff, including redevelopment. But we went in to Avondale to get some rental units for folks in proximity to Bethesda Metro, in an area that was unavailable generally to folks who could afford it or had the potential, witness this, to be upscale. And I just, I have not been sold on the idea, and at this point, I've got to say that I am opposed to it and would not support it.
Rick, I understand that. When we bought this, though, we bought this site as a package, knowing that this side of the street was kind of a widow. It wasn't abutting the units across the street, which provided development potential and expansion for us, because it, at least in my mind, it was a different animal than the three on the other side. And I think the issue of the control period with the MPDU sales, when a new control period occurs, is required to occur any time during that 30 years that the property is sold, you've got another 30-year track running. So I really have a problem. I think even the 30-year control period is excessive because most properties turn over much more frequently. But I'm not convinced that the valuation, I understand where the number came from, but I do think I would condition anything on an appraisal, and I would expect the appraisal to come in higher than $1.2 million.
Well, but Jackie, I guess one of the comments I would have on your commentary is, one, I believe the differential between the north and south sides in terms of zoning occurred after we purchased it. Is that right? Is that right, Zach?
Yes, the rezoning
Okay.
came after the purchase.
But I'm not speaking of the rezoning as much as I am that it's physically detached
Well,
from
yeah,
the others.
but my view, and I was not on the commission at the time that it was purchased, but I know what my view was sitting at DHCA recommending that ROFR be implemented. It wasn't because of redevelopment potential. It was because we had property that would be available for rental to low-income people in perpetuity almost. And the fact that you had one located there and others across the street. And the other thing I don't remember, and Zach or Kayleen, you can, were there other properties? I keep thinking that another nonprofit owned
Yep.
one. Is
Yep,
that
you're
correct?
correct. Yeah,
That's
so
what I thought.
to the east of 4527, so the two to the east, the county actually triggered on those prior
Right.
to these and transferred them to the National Center for Children and Families, who currently uses them for their mission.
And where are those? Let me.
Yeah, so if you flip back a slide, I think this will work. Yeah, so if you see the letter E on this slide, that's 45. That's ours, 4527.
Yes.
And then the two that are kind of the lighter roofs before you get to the one that says
Yes.
B.
Between E and B, right? The two that are between E and B.
Correct.
Yeah.
So those were transferred by the county after.
I thought there. So what we've got two properties on that side that are already dedicated to
Public
a need
purpose.
that the county has to address.
Yes.
Why would we give it up? I just, yeah,
Well-
that actually cements my position in opposition to this.
Okay.
Because you've got 6 houses, 3 of which right now are controlled in terms of income and use.
I certainly, knowing this piece of information, I would feel much more comfortable if we were offering if we were going to dispose of it, or offer to dispose of it to that adjacent nonprofit. I think that'd be much more consistent with our purpose. We certainly, however, have added significantly to the affordable inventory in Bethesda with our recent purchase. So I'm not as persuaded by that issue as I am knowing that here's a nonprofit adjacent to it. And if we're going to dispose of it, looking at going that direction with a public mission impetus. So
Well, but the only reason we're considering disposing of it is because
we
some
were approached by a buyer.
some developer has offered to buy it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway.
But Zach, isn't there also the possibility of significantly increasing the number of units on that side? I know that the zoning and the density consider it, but isn't there the possibility of increasing the number of units on that side of the street as well?
Yeah, I mean,
They're all-
again, we're trying to really start a period of exploration here. We were trying to come in the door with at least what we were able to say. We tried to work on things that we could say that we knew wouldn't have to be backtracked on, but not necessarily this, you know, so we wanted to define the floor, but not the ceiling. And so there definitely is an opportunity, you know, when we bought these for the pure purpose of preserving them, you know, six years ago. That was it. They were at risk. They were going to trade. They were going to be at risk, period. So we bought them. And so we wouldn't exit these, you know, just because we could. We would exit these because we were able to craft something that's better. That's it. I mean, we just don't totally know what the better is yet, but we have some ideas. You're actually kind of nibbling around some of those ideas too. So I think the general answer, and you know, we just don't have the specifics because we're just starting these conversations, but the general answer is, you know, we would only, you know, forego this ownership for something that's better and more, you know, and provides for an increase in what was the general purpose. So, you know, the other thing about these properties is that they're very old. So, so at some point, it's about preserving the inventory from a number standpoint than it is from a physical. That said, they're fine. I mean, you know, we don't have to move them now. We can continue to operate them. But I just want to say that to Karen's question, that, you know, there's an opportunity to significantly increase housing relative to what's there, just housing in general. And in doing so,
That's not our role. Our main purpose is not to just increase housing.
it is
Our
not to
main
just increase
purpose
housing.
is
I
to
agree with that.
increase affordable housing in the county in various forms.
Yeah, I totally agree. So that's, you know, that's what we would, you know, we would craft something that would have that
Okay.
energy to it. So
Well, let me just say, I've made my point. I did forget in terms of valuation that the price also ignores the increase in value as a result of aggregation. That is I think a factor. But in any event, I'm opposed to it. I heard your arguments, and you've got 6 other commissioners who can support you going forward.
I'm sorry to come back into this so late, and I don't want to go cover fast ground, but since you're on this site, I was looking at this, just wondering, I know the property that's subject to talking about this, but the other properties, A, B, C, and D, I'm assuming these are properties that we own, correct?
no, those are just
No?
recent trades.
Okay,
We don't
well,
we don't own A, B, C, or D.
so we only own E.
We own E, and then mostly off screen in the bottom right corner. In the bottom right corner, the last full house you can see, or full building you can see, that has the white roof.
Yeah.
That is the first of the other 3 that we bought that extend to the east and are right behind Waverly House. So those are the 3 that under the new zoning we would get at least 75 units out of 17. So, you know, that's also part of our comfort here with being a little bit creative with things, because we already know we're gonna, with the rezoning of the property that's in place, you know, that we're gonna at least triple, probably quadruple or more the total count of units that we bought. So, but I didn't put those in because we bought the whole thing in aggregate, and it was also a little bit older than these data points. So
Yeah, because the only question I had was about, because I didn't know the aggregation of what the whole site looked like. The developer was talking about achieving the number of units that were being talked about, especially the additional affordable units, because in fact, they would have exceeded the amount on the site now. That was the point of interest to me. So I didn't hear all the conversation. I don't need to hear it all over, but I would like to hear more about this though.
I would
There's a
like,
correction, I think. It's not, they're not increasing the number. Right now, you've got two buildings, A and, oh, wait a minute, B, I'm sorry, that are currently naturally occurring affordable. And you got 4 units. We got 4 that are affordable. And what he's talking about is however many units he produces, he's gonna have 8 affordable units. So there's no increase.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, again, not really. And I think probably part of my failure to communicate here is that we were really just trying to provide a threshold here. So again, the properties that are at issue here, E, we own 4 units, all naturally occurring affordable. And the building immediately to its left, which is 4531, same thing, it's identical. And what we were trying to do is say that as a floor to what we would do there, I mean, not what we would do, but what we would affect, is that those 8 unrestricted affordable units as a floor to all this, just to start the discussion, all 8 of those would be retained in terms of a for sale MPDU. Like that's the worst we can do here, basically, to be maybe a little bit more plain, that's the worst we can do, but we actually think we can do better. If for some reason we were able to get 60 units here, or we were able to do something in addition to what we're thinking about here, you know, the idea here that the architect has presented to me is to do more than the minimum. So that 20% is at least a 20% of whatever the yield is. And then as it relates to our other 3 that we would retain, would not enter, the 3 that we own on the south side of Avondale, are clearly, assets that are going to produce, much more both housing and affordable housing in their next life. We already know that through the master plan. As I said, we're going from 7, so there are 17 units in those 3 buildings behind Waverly, and there's at least 75 units that we can get out of that site. So we're going to add 58 units, and as usual with us, we're doing 30% affordable and so on and so forth. So we're not worried that this regardless of what happens with this particular item, we're already not worried that that this right of first refusal acquisition is, we're not worried that, are we going to be able to preserve these 1-for-1? Are we going to be able to expand affordable housing here? That's a done deal. We're going to be able to do both of those things no matter what happens with this item. But we did think that there was an opportunity here to explore. And as I said, we're trying to provide you a threshold. There are a lot of ideas out there. We just didn't want to ruin the packet with 8 different ideas we're working on right now, but rather to provide a threshold just to say, look, we're starting, we think, from a really good worst case scenario.
I think the other issue that concerns me probably more than anything is the condominium form of ownership, which is going to drive the monthly housing cost to a different AMI than is there now. And though I see this as less valuable to us in the long haul and to focus on those that are abutting Waverly House, because if it's, I don't think that we are, when they level those 2 buildings and rebuild at today's construction costs, and you add the condominium fees on top of it, those are not what I will define or view as affordable. And that's my issue with doing this. If and maybe because it's so early in your evaluations and deliberations on the various, I might feel differently if other perspectives and choices and opportunities were there. I still see that as an outlier property that has less value to us as far as providing housing, other than the families we're housing now, and the ability to continue to house people in that income bracket. I think we lose affordability, and I'm not excited about creating home ownership in Bethesda. I think the rentals are important. I don't know whether Roy has heard enough or whether he's got questions that he would like to add for his information before I ask for a vote. But I'm certainly not prepared to say yes at this point. I would feel I needed to be convinced on the issue of ownership versus rental.
Well, you know, some years ago, it hasn't been done recently, as I'm aware of, but to deal with the issue you have, Jackie, about the condominium and the affordability that comes from the condo fees. Some years ago, we did a number of limited equity co-ops as a way to providing entry and ownership to people who were not as financially positioned as those who could compete in the condominium market. So we haven't done limited equity co-ops in some time. And I don't know we've done in this area, but it certainly is another strategy you could look at if you were trying to address the issue you're raising with that, Jackie.
My experience with co-ops in Montgomery County is that they are not attractive other than cost, and they carry, the Montgomery County market has not been responsive. But what happens with the resale MPDUs that are condominium, particularly in Bethesda, is that the bulk of them go not to income eligible people, but there are a substantial number of persons who eye the opportunity to seize the purchase opportunity of an MPDU at an MPDU price in a property that has much more market value. And the persons who can financially qualify under the income limits of carrying the condo fee has had a significant effect on who ends up buying the MPDUs, and they go to market eligible buyers. And I just don't see any reason for us to contribute to something that is going to end up going to non-eligible young adults making a lot of money, but living in a downtown DC condo because no eligible families were able to afford to buy it. And I've been a party to some of those transactions as a realtor over the years, and it just breaks my heart every time one of those goes to a non-qualified purchaser.
So commissioners, I'd like to propose that we table this item. And
I would certainly consider that.
Can I say two things? I think that's a good idea. Two things though in closing. Number one, why do we have to have a letter of intent? I mean, this seems to me to be, and you got there's enough work to be done on other options if ever the commission is to be convinced of this. What what's the main reason for a LOI? If the developer wants to come up with some proposals that he can sell us, that's fine. He can take the time and effort and pay whatever it costs to develop those proposals. And the other comment I would make is, and I know it won't sit too well with some, you guys are doing so many great things at HOC. Why are we wasting time on this? You're spending so much time on all of this developing proposals when you've got a ton of other stuff that you were working on that is accomplishing a heck of a lot more. I'm sorry, I'm distressed.
Yes, distraught.
You're right.
Is there a motion to table this discussion?
Well, we don't actually, you don't need a motion. I'm
need
just
a
gonna
motion
use
table.
executive privilege to table it, and I appreciate all of the commentary and yes.
Motion?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Can we move on to Strathmore Court, please?
Okay, this one hopefully will go very quickly. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Arrington, Acting Director of Mortgage Finance, to walk you through this very brief memo and request. Jennifer, please go ahead.
Good morning, commissioners. On June 3rd, the commission approved several actions related to Strathmore Court, including a bond authorizing resolution under the 1996 indenture that ultimately funded the underlying mortgage for Strathmore Court. That resolution also authorized staff to begin processing an FHA risk share application to secure credit enhancement of the existing mortgage. That application is almost complete. For the FHA risk share credit enhancement, the borrower or mortgagor must be a single purpose ownership entity. Currently, 151 market rate units are owned by HOC and 51 affordable units are owned by Strathmore Court Associates Limited Partnership. And if you move to the next page, you can show the ownership structure. Given that the partnership is now essentially 100% owned by the commission, as represented in the diagram above, it is recommended that the commission transfer the 151 market rate units to the partnership so that one single asset entity owns the full community and may apply for the FHA risk share credit enhancement as the borrower. HOC would assume 25% of the risk of the transaction and HUD would assume 75%. Upon commission's approval, staff will submit the application and anticipate receiving FHA's endorsement no later than mid-July. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none. I call for the question. All in favor of transferring the units from HOC to Strathmore Court Associates Partnership indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. You are right in your prediction. It was quick. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Are there other issues to come before us?
Not today. This is the last item. Thank you very much for your time.
I'd like to just also ask whether we have any special need vouchers and where we are. At some point, could we have a report on the kind of vouchers overall that we have and any that we have pending by application?
Pending by application?
By submitting proposals to HUD for vouchers. I understand that there are some vouchers available for homeless youth. And I wondered if we were going to be applying for those and whether there were other special needs vouchers that are pending or that we are trying to place into the marketplace.
Yeah, I can get your report. I can't, I mean, Lynn, who manages this is Dev Finn, so I didn't come prepared to answer that. And I want to actually give you a detailed answer.
Okay.
So I can,
Well, to the extent we could get kind of an update on that at some
Sure.
point as well.
not,
I'd
not a
appreciate it.
problem. Not a problem.
Any other observations or questions? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Excellent.
Bye-bye. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Take care and enjoy the weekend.
You too.